Good day to all the Aviapreneurs who joined us today in a new episode of Aviapreneurs podcast. This is Adnan Baranbo, and my topic for today's episode is more related to commercial airline industry than other segments, but we're gonna cover all the aviation industry. The topic will be loyalty programs in the aviation industry. And my guest to discuss today's topic is Mr. Mark Ross Smith. Good day, Mark. Thank you for joining me today.
Good evening. It's fabulous to be with you.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to introduce Mark to the audience. Mark is an aviapreneur from Australia. He's living currently in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. Mark is a co-founder and the chief executive officer of StatusMatch.com, which is a company that creates loyalty customer acquisition, technology products that are essentials for the airline industry loyalty programs. Mark is a leading authority and a thought leader and an expert on the subject. He speaks about the loyalty programs internationally, and earlier in his career, he was heading the loyalty program for Malaysia Airlines between 2018 and 17 and 18. Mark has more than 20 years of international experience managing loyalty programs for both the telecom and the travel industries. What an impressive profile and career, Mark. I'm very happy and honored to talk to you today.
Thank you. That was a very generous introduction. I think you also forgot the most important point is that still looks very young.
Indeed, this is what I said. When I was telling you when I started the podcast that when I read your profile, I thought I'm going to talk to someone in the 50s, 60s, but you're very young indeed. Well done. So Mark, it's well known in business in general that keeping a current customer, having a loyal customer and continuing to do business with them is more cost effective than gaining a new client. That's why it's very essential for all kinds of businesses, and especially also for the airline and the aviation industry, to establish programs to keep current customers, to make them happy and to make them loyal and to ensure they come back again and again. From your experience, what was the impact of introducing loyalty programs on the revenue of the airline industry?
So first and foremost, I think we need to be clear. Loyalty programs need to make sense for all stakeholders. So that is everyone within an airline, right from frontline workers right to the board level and investors and everyone. I know it sounds a bit common sense here, but loyalty programs need to make more money than they cost to run. Yeah, otherwise you wouldn't do it. And fortunately, in the airline industry, in the commercial airline industry, not only are they profitable, but they can be so profitable that they can actually be worth more than the airline itself. So we have seen this in the last few years, where especially American, United, Delta, when they started publishing some of their SEC filings, or in 2020, 21ish, we started to see the valuations of their loyalty programs be worth more than the market capitalization of the entire company. And this is really interesting because fundamentally what's driving it is the cash flows from co-brand credit cards. So this is, you earn your points and miles from spending on your credit card, right? You transfer them to the airline and you use those points for your free business first class trip. Yeah. When you earn those miles on your credit card, it's the bank paying the airline real cash for those points, right? And I'm making it up, but let's say they're paying 1 cent per point, right? And then when you redeem those points, you might be redeeming it, for example, half a cent per point. And so what it means is effectively like a 50% gross margin in there. And, they're pretty good margins for an airline that's normally, used to sort of selling seats, which are a lot less than that, and that's sort of cash up front. American Airlines, in one of their reports published, they had a 72% gross margin on points sold to banks. I think it's 53% net margin. And so what it means is that these loyalty programs are effectively marketing companies, right? Not loyalty, they're marketing or technology companies. And the way that the market values a marketing company is very different to the way the market values an airline,
Yes, very interesting point and perspective indeed.
So there's a few, call romantic dynamics in the airline industry that, retail and other industries just can't capitalize on. So airlines are in a unique position to really do more with the loyalty program. But, ultimately what they're designed for for airlines is to drive incremental revenue, to increase share of wallet consolidation. So that's make sure people fly with your airline or your brand more than anyone else. And if at the upper end of the echelon, revenue protection. So this is keeping people flying your brand versus another one. If you think about it, if you've got your top 10 customers, I'm making this up, spending $1 million a year each with your airline, and they go switch their loyalty to another airline, that's what, 10 million bucks that not only you're not getting it, but that's high margin, probably the best yielding customers you got. They're now going to competitor and giving them the money. It means your competitor's got a leg up on you. So keeping that revenue protection, keeping that on your books, super critical, especially when you get to your sort of the top of the top frequent flyers, your platinum, your VIP, these kind of guys. Commercial lines really do a lot to try and keep these customers, because it's ultra expensive to try and get them back in if they do leave.
But here I have something actually got my attention here. How much is there a percentage? Is it known how much actually of the airline revenue and flights are actually booked using points? Because the booking flights with points is very attractive for the airline. They make a lot of money out of them, as you mentioned. So is there any kind of percentage known in average?
Okay, I've seen anywhere between 2% and 20%, depending on the airline. Some airlines use like a cash plus miles scenario where you're paying part cash, part miles, right? And some are just full miles. If you're using full miles for a ticket and you're getting a really good deal on it, generally that's a distressed inventory, so the airline doesn't think it's going to sell the seat anyway. So they're getting something rather than nothing. They're putting the bum in the seat. You're having a fantastic experience. You're getting this business class seat across the Atlantic for what you think is free. And, the airline there's going to be no one in that seat anyway, right? So it's really not really cost the airline. You're there on Instagram taking photos. How amazing is this? Is amazing. You're promoting the airline for free. So
yes,
there's a lot of good benefits out of that. So, it depends on the airline, what percentage is. It could even be a lot higher, depending on how generous the program wants to be.
But the numbers you mentioned are already good enough indeed. But if the loyalty programs are that useful and profitable for the airlines, why not all airlines are having them? How much is the percentage of airlines having loyalty programs?
So we think about the big commercial airlines. Obviously, if you're in one of the big alliances, like a OneWorld, Star Alliance, SkyTeam, they all have a pretty similar loyalty program. They need that because there's a service standard that they all have to adhere to. So they've got cross benefits. So if you're like a gold level in one airline, the idea is if you fly within that alliance, you get your gold benefits with another one, right? So those sort of what we'll call the top 70, 80 airlines kind of thing, they've all got a pretty similar sort of thing going on. If you look at the low cost airlines, a lot of them have slightly different models. EasyJet's got their subscription thing going on, not really any tiers in the program. You look in Asia, Air Asia, they've got tiers, but there's no real status benefits apart from a mileage multiplier on when you fly. Again, Air Asia is a little different because they've got this super app that they're invested in now, which is again worthwhile for the airline itself on the market. And so it's looks and feels a little different there. In the US, you got a bunch of US airlines. Frontier Airlines, one I'm very familiar with. They've got a fantastic credit card portfolio with the banks, and it's worth a lot of money. So for them, it's people flying is one thing, but selling more credit cards and getting people on that credit card can be ultra profitable for them. So I think most decent airlines have something, or at least should. If they're not, they should absolutely be looking at it, because as we've learned the last sort of 3 years through the pandemic, is when all these loyalty financials came to light for the first time ever for a lot of these airlines, we started to see that really there's only 3 ways that airlines are making money. One, governments or something to do with government. There's either free money or a loan or something like that. Something government. Loyalty is another one, because the loyalty, leveraging the loyalty to get something else, or cargo, right? Yeah, I like and you're an or private jet operator. You're one of these categories. No one else is making money. Selling seats for cash is like that's yesterday's business. No one does that anymore.
Should not be the business model anymore. But if it's that useful, and if it's that attractive, and if it's going to be that great investment, how easy it is if an airline decided to set up a new loyalty program? How fast they can do that, and how costly it is?
Yeah, I think if any airline's starting from scratch or really wanted to overhaul something that they had today, you have to start with the strategy first. You know, there's a million technology providers out there. You know, so if you wanted to go on the road, get a system provider to help you sort of roll something out technically so it could start working. There's a bunch of really good operators out there that could help with that. But ultimately, it comes down to how attractive the program is. You know, what type of market are you trying to attract? Are you trying to acquire customers, retain customers? Are you trying to loyalty is going to have its own P&L? You know, what's the big goal here? And then you would get a technology to kind of plug into that to support what you're actually trying to achieve. It's kind of like you don't go out and just say, I'm going to start an airline. I'm going to buy 10 737 MAX 8s. You know, you start with like, where should we fly? How can we make money? You know, who's going to support this? Who's going to pay for it? You know, where we're going to get preferential treat, whatever it is, right? You start with all that stuff first, and then you go, what sort of aircraft is best for our company? So similar with the loyalty proposition, you want to, and it might look and feel different to, you know, what a competing airline down the road is doing. You know, you don't just want to blindly cut. You don't just look at someone like Emirates and say they've got a fantastic program, let's copy it. Because, you know, there's been a lot of hours and thought and consultants and really smart people that have sort of got their eyes into something like an Emirates, and it's very specifically designed to achieve very specific outcomes for that airline. And that may just fall flat on its face for, you know, for someone else if you're just kind of trying to copy it. So, you know, I think every airline should have some type of loyalty proposition. What that looks like, I think, should be dependent on what the airline's trying to achieve. But, you know, I think given the last few years and what we've learned in the world, I think it'd be crazy not to have a loyalty program.
Very interesting. So what does your company do to airlines? StatusMatch.com. You mentioned to me when we discussed that you provide technology products for loyalty programs. How does technology help airlines loyalty programs?
So we take a step back. So about 30 to 40% of all commercial airline tickets sold today come from the top 5% of loyalty program members, right? And this group of people are the single most valuable group of commercial air travelers that exist today, right? These people typically have silver, gold, platinum, you know, the status with an airline, right? A lot of them also have the credit card, right? So these are ultra valuable customers. Now, the idea of a status match is actually not a new thing at all. It's been around for at least 35 years. It's not new. We talk about our company as, it's kind of like, you remember the old airline, the paper tickets, you know, the red sort of film, you remember those? Yeah. Yes. It's kind of like that. That's the old status match, right? That's how it used to be done. And we're introducing electronic ticketing, right? That's the equivalent shift and change of the industry. So it's nothing revolutionary in terms of the idea of a status match. But we're putting this technology play around it for it. So the simple idea of a status match, you've got gold with one airline, right? Because you're a top frequent flyer, you fly a lot, you're gold status. And your company sends you to a new city, right? To relocate for some reason. And now it doesn't make sense to fly with your old airline because you can't anymore because it just doesn't operate there, right? So they move you to, I make it up, Dubai. And it's like, well, I should start flying Emirates now because it makes a lot more sense. There's more connectivity, just more options, right? And so it's like, I'm already gold with this airline over here. How can I get gold equivalent with Emirates straight away, right? Because I don't want to start from the bottom again because I've proven myself to the industry, right? How can I just shortcut my way up here? And that's what we do. We provide what's called a status match. It matches your status from one airline to another. So we provide that technology piece that sort of sits in the middle to actually facilitate it and make it happen. And we do that on behalf of, you know, a bunch of pretty big brand name airlines around the world. And the process and how it used to work is you would email someone at the airline, if you knew someone, you email CEO and say, hey, I'm a gold member with the airline. I've just moved to Dubai. Can I get gold status, please? and you're basically begging, right? This happens today with a lot of really big airlines. You're begging. You've got this customer that's spending 10, 20, 50, $100,000 a year with a competitor, is coming to you and say, I want to spend money with you. And airlines don't have a system or it's airlines will ignore these people. Like some airlines, if they even reply to your email, might take 3, 4, 5 weeks. Like, this is crazy. If you email me and say, hey, I want to spend $10,000, but I want to reply within about a minute. Like, I'll take your money.
But do actually a lot of people do that? I mean, if airlines are interested in having a system like that, this means there is a demand for this. People are actually asking for their status to be matched by other airlines.
There's been a demand for the last 35 years. There's been an increased demand in I want to say the last 12 months or so. And this is what's driving that demand is, I call it the status cliff, right? So airlines and hotels have been extending the status of people for free for the last 2 or 3 years, because, not everyone can fly, borders, restrictions, quarantine, all this kind of stuff. And so now about half the world's elite members, so about 25 million people or so, are due for a downgrade at the end of this year, right? So a lot of people are out there looking to see how they can keep their gold status with another airline, because they know they're going to get downgraded with their current airline because they haven't been flying enough, right? And no one wants to lose gold status, right? Or platinum, whatever you've got, right? You've tasted the perks. You've had the priority boarding, you've had the lounge, you've had the better seats, you've had the free upgrades, you've had all these perks, and you don't want to lose it. You don't want to be with the other 300 people as you line up to board the aircraft. You want to be at the front. It feels good when you're just waltzing past everyone else in that business or first class line. Absolutely. So that a lot of that is driving demand today.
Absolutely, very interesting. So StatusMatch actually, does it link the system, the 2 loyalty programs of 2 airlines, so the airline can verify the status of the person in the other airline? How does actually it works from technology perspective?
Yeah, so the airlines aren't going to talk to each other and let each other steal customers. So we kind of sit in the middle there, where we integrate with a bunch of systems and we do the validation on behalf of the airlines. So customers, we would in a typical scenario, we have a white label sort of page with an airline brand, and if someone contacts the airline, they just send them to this white label page. We put them through a process, takes 60 seconds. It validates they have status from another airline, validates they're not a bot, validates they're not selling status on Taobao in China somewhere. There's a lot of security and anti-fraud checks that sort of go on there, just to make sure it's a real person. Right, real person that's not being sold somewhere else, because at the end of the day, we're bringing new high value customers to airlines that, they can't really process themselves. And so we just want to bring them really high quality people that actually sometimes it's people that the sales team can't get to. These airlines have big sales teams all around the world doing, dinners and drinks and all sorts of stuff, trying to schmooze people. They get them to sign contracts, big companies and stuff. And so sometimes it's the individual travelers, who they control their own budget, their own spend. And, how do you capture business from these people? Because they're not big enough for a corporate contract, but they're not really small enough where you just ignore them. They're kind of somewhere in the middle, but that middle actually puts them already in the top 5% of global travelers. So you kind of want them. And so, having a structured process that we put people through, in some ways, it's a quasi way to outsource a sales team in some ways for free.
I like it. The airline loyalty programs, these frequent flyer customers who are in the program and who flies a lot, the airline has a lot of data on these passengers. From your experience, how can airlines actually benefit from these data? How do they use it to increase the loyalty of the customer?
You're I put a post on LinkedIn today, you might have seen it, about how I no kidding, I booked this flight with an airline yesterday, booked this flight with an airline, and I'm a gold member with this airline. I won't mention the airline. And so gold member, I get a lounge access for me and my guests, and priority boarding and seat selection, all this kind of stuff, right? It was an economy ticket I was booking. And the airline is trying to sell me in this process, lounge access for my 5-year-old who's on the same ticket, who would get lounge access for free, right? 5-year-olds don't drink champagne in lounges. I can tell you that. And so they're trying to sell me something I already get as part of my status, you know. And I know this sounds really simple, and but airlines are just not even, some airlines are not even using that data. Like, this is such a simple thing where, why would you show me a lounge to like pay $100 to go in the lounge? Why not show me something else, like earn triple miles on this trip for an extra $50? And basically just selling me extra miles, right? Which we know is high margin revenue. The chances of me buying that is pretty high if I'm a loyalty member, because I understand the value of miles, right? Sure as hell I'm buying a lounge pass for something I already get. It's wasted real estate, you know? Like, how many of these, you know, well, let's call them ads. How many of these ads or products that airlines showing people that are kind of wasted because the person wouldn't ever buy it anyway? And so when we talk about airlines using data, I think sometimes they should take a step back and go, you know what? Let's just put aside the big data, AI, personalized. Let's put that aside for a second and just get today right. Because today, using this really simplistic ideas of data in terms of showing people the right stuff, there's probably more opportunity there than investing in some unknown of the future around algorithms and all sort of stuff, right? Why not focus on today? Because there's such a big revenue opportunity right here, right now, in these sorts of things. I mean, just go out and make some money. It's not difficult.
So yeah, so your experience in loyalty programs is way beyond the airline industry. You started in the telecommunications and you also worked for hotels. So loyalty programs, are they the same for all these segments, or there are differences?
Little different. In telco, it's about churn reduction. So, you know, I've seen, I mean, this is going back a few years, but, you know, I remember some stats like something like 80% of people in prepaid in some Western country, prepaid mobile phones in some countries, you know, would churn or change operators every month or two. And what that meant is the cost of acquisition skyrocketed for these companies. So it was really expensive to get them back in. So if you spent a percentage of that to try and keep them on the network, it worked out a lot cheaper than going out and just constantly doing acquisition. So telco is a fun game. That was a telco social network we had back in the day. It was a lot of fun. You know, I think hospitality and hotel loyalty slightly the same but different with airline, just because hotels, you've generally got like the hotel chain sort of sitting at the top, and under that you've got all the properties, and generally they're owned by not like different. They're hotel owners. They're not owned by the brand at the top. So the dynamic, the dynamic between them is a little different. Whereas airline, generally, the airline owns the loyalty program. They have the aircraft, all this sort of stuff, right? So they control the customer experience as well, and so they can, you know, you can imagine you can kind of lose some money on with your left hand if you're going to make twice as much with your right hand, right? So that's kind of loosely the logic with airline. You know, you can give away something here if you're going to get more over here, whereas with, you know, hotels is less like that, because you're shifting costs from the hotel brand to the hotel owner, right? Which are two totally different, you know, objectives in what they're trying to do. So there's, you know, when we talk about loyalty, there's a common theme across industry, across retail, hospitality, telco, airline. There's definitely a common theme, but there's nuances, I think, within each. But, you know, we're talking about airline and travel here, so it's obviously the sexiest industry to be in and the most profitable for loyalty.
Indeed, it is. And now the more sexy than the airline industry actually is the private jet industry. And we've seen that, as you mentioned, most of the big airlines are actually having loyalty programs. However, I think very rare, if I'm not actually aware myself of private jet operators actually having loyalty programs to retain and to have their customers coming back and loyal to them. So from your experience, how do you think private jet operators can introduce their own loyalty programs? It's not the same nature of operation like the commercial airline industry. So there must be changes like the ones you mentioned between airline, hotels, and telco. But how can you imagine it?
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a really interesting area, because if the commercial airlines, most of the money comes from the high value customers that they have. And there's probably some overlap between the ultra high value customers that commercial airlines have and then private operators. What drives a lot of the airline loyalty part is a sense of entitlement from travelers, or ego, or just feeling good, having a bit of having more privacy, speed, these kinds of things. And if you fly first class with some really good airlines, that you kind of get this pieces of that private jet experience, just snippets of it. I mean, I was on Emirates just a couple of weeks ago, and I walk off the aircraft, my transit in Dubai, and there was a lady standing at the front door, and she's like, "I will escort you to the lounge now," and she got me on the little buggy, and I didn't have to think. It just happened. It just happened. And there's these little things that that I really valuable in the commercial airline space. So I think what could private jet operators learn from that, and how could you piece some of that into their operations? For example, I will take a guess and say not every person can fly private every time they fly, right? So sometimes you look at your trip and go, well, I'm in Dubai and I need to go to New York, and you go, oh geez, 400,000, whatever it is, right? You go, well, I'm not willing to pay that this time, or I can't, I'll sacrifice and take me and the family in first class instead, right? So there's probably a bit of overlap there where actually this would be interesting. A private jet operator and a big commercial airline doing some kind of deal for the times you can't fly private, go here, kind of thing.
Actually, yes, for some passengers, flying first class is actually more luxury than private jet. Like if the passenger is flying on a long haul jet, not one of the big jets like the Airbus, the BBJ or ACJ. If they fly on a Bombardier or Gulfstream, it's not gonna be as comfortable as the Airbus 380 first class. So it makes sense to fly to New York and then connect to a private jet for the domestic segment in the US. So yes, collaboration can be there.
That would be pretty interesting. Some sort of collaboration. Maybe there's a special tier that the airline creates for people that only fly first and private, and vice versa. I think that would be pretty interesting, actually.
Yeah, maybe you can introduce it and we can talk about it in a future episode.
Sounds good. I will do that.
Yeah. So besides StatusMatch, you also have traveldatadaily.com. It's a news website dedicated for loyalty programs. Can you tell us some more about it?
Yeah, I started this probably 6 or 7 years ago to really start. It started as like what I'll call thought leadership, right? Which is just a way I get ideas out of my head. Because I had all these things that I'd learned from telco and seen in hospitality. And I thought, this airline game is really cool. I love this. I want to get into airline, but there's so much more they could do. Here's some new ideas. Here's some creative ways to do this. Here's how you can make more money doing this. Here's how you could get more people doing this. I got these ideas out there. I just wanted to get them download them into the brains of people working in airlines, because the logic was, if they implement these ideas, then me as a legit frequent flyer, because I'm a big frequent flyer, I buy my own flights all around the world, I'll benefit from that, right? Instead of going to the CEO of an airline complaining and say, hey, whatever, I thought I'll just start this blog. I'll start this subtle way of, getting it out there in a way that's, oh, that's kind of cool, and get people sharing it and stuff like that. And so, fast forward a few years, and there's a bunch of stuff on there. I don't make money from it. I just sort of put all the stuff out there. I'll call it thought leadership, but it's just new ideas, trying to get new ideas in the world, new ways of doing things. If you're interested in travel loyalty, I think you could spend 2 hours on my blog, which is free, and there's no selling of anything on there. You could probably spend 2 hours on there and, probably save yourself a couple $100,000 in consulting fees from someone else, just by learning how to do stuff without all the nonsense. So it was really there, just trying to get these ideas out there, and it's worked really well. There's thousands and thousands of people subscribe to it. I think someone from every major airline in the world is sort of subscribed to it, and has read stuff. I've obviously generated business from the blog as well. And so I think it's a bit unique in that it's just me sharing freely with the world, new ideas, new ways to do things.
I like it. I'm going to be following it. So, Mark, earlier in your career, you worked as an executive for many companies. You're a speaker, you're a consultant, and you're a leading expert in your on loyalty programs, your area of expertise. Despite all of that, you decided to launch your own businesses. You're currently an entrepreneur. So, in your point of view, it seems to me like these days everybody need to start a business, need to have an idea, bring it to the world as a successful reality. Do you think entrepreneurship help professionals achieve their full potential?
I think so.
Is it necessary for every professional in whatever industry or the airline industry to become an entrepreneur?
For me, I was an entrepreneur, and then I went and got a job with an airline. Like
Okay.
why? And now back as an entrepreneur. Like why the heck would I go get a job? Like who does that? For me, I really wanted to do it. You know, as a bucket list item, I wanted to work for an airline. You know, you kind of get that experience and do it, and you feel a couple of gaps in your knowledge, and that's really good for experience. So for me, that journey has been really wonderful. I think if we look at again at airlines, I think there's a lot of value in when you get to be above a certain level, maybe like a VP director, something like that, at an airline. You get a certain level. I think the best thing you could do is be a customer of your own product. So what I mean by that is no more star flights. Get your credit card out, buy a ticket in another airline, and keep flying. Just keep going. I think above a certain level in airline, you should have to earn or maintain like a silver or gold status with an airline on merit, legitimately, and not get reimbursed for it. I think you should be able to do that, because what happens then is you start seeing all the little things, right? You start experiencing what your customers, where you make your money, you start seeing what they go through every day. You start really seeing their pain points from your own perspective as well. So you're on a flight, and you know the seat didn't inflate or something, and you know what I mean. You know what's going to happen. You get off the flight, you're going to text so and so in the product in operations and say seat 9A on this aircraft doesn't work, fix it, right? Things will get done miraculously fast. You know, if suddenly people at airlines had to start buying their own tickets, because they're going to be solving their own problems. They're also going to come towards the end of the year. They'll be like, oh, I'm a little bit short on keeping my gold status because I can't get it for free anymore, even though I work at the airline. And they'll go talk to the guy in loyalty or girl and say, hey, we need to run a promotion to make it easy to keep gold status, right? There'll be things like this will happen. And it actually benefits everyone, though. It benefits the frequent flyers, benefits the no one loses in this scenario. So I think, there's that, in that sense, it will help people at airlines become maybe intrapreneurs, where they're entrepreneurs internally within the organization. They can be more cheerleaders for their own product. And also means when they're out talking with suppliers, vendors, the public, media, they can talk to their own product in a real way. You know what I mean? They can say, I was on this seat yesterday and I did this and I saw this movie, and I wasn't a great there's always 18 almonds on the tray, whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like the tiny little things that you wouldn't notice unless you start paying your own way to get there. So I think, my background as like you and many others, as a legitimate frequent flyer, I think that's really helped a lot. And when you can apply that to working in an airline or creating new product or loyalty within an airline, I think it really comes through, it really shines, right? And then other travelers that see what's happening in the loyalty and in the product of an airline, they look at it and go, like, it's these small things that they're so small, but they mean the world to travelers. Absolutely. You know what I mean? It's these little, and once you get that right, people start seeing it, people embrace it, and people fly more and start spending more with you.
I like this perspective. I think everybody should do it. Thank you so much, Mark. Actually, before we close, you have a very successful career, and you have started and built and grow a successful business that's having the world-leading airlines as customers. So I'm sure the audience would like to hear from you a couple of points, a piece of advice on what they should do to start, launch, and grow a successful business. What do you recommend them to do?
So let's be clear. I have no idea how to run an airline at all. There's a lot of way smarter people than me out there that are experts on that stuff. So running or managing on, no idea at all. Running a loyalty program, yeah, I'm pretty good at that. I'll talk about two things quickly. In airline space, to my point earlier, I think you got to follow the money these days. Trying to sell seats for dollars, you need to, there needs to be an additional dynamic there, another layer. Government alignment, either that or a big loyalty thing that is driving the revenue, in which case you're more of a marketing company than like a marketing company that has an airline division, not an airline that has a loyalty division. Is a new way to look at it. Cargo has been a big winner the last few years, obviously. I think if you're in airline, if you're aligning with one of these things, makes a lot of sense. But ultimately, for me, I've just been trying to solve my own problems. I had a StatusMatch problem myself many years ago, and that's kind of what kickstarted my journey. And I think when you're doing something that personally affects you, your head and your heart are both in it, right? And when you got a startup or upstart business, there's highs and there's lows in the business, and there's a lot of lows. And it's just about managing getting through those down periods when you think everything's about to collapse. And the thing that gets you through that is you're solving your own problem, right? And so that's why I feel if you're just sort of doing it because you're trying to make that world a better place, because it's a pain that you've experienced, then you'll get through those sort of those down times, and the up times always come. And I think when you love what you do, it shines, it sort of comes through, people can see it, and ultimately people see it, and then they want to do business with you, and then just keeps growing from there.
I like your advice. I'm sure many of the audience are going to follow it. Thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your interest. I really learned personally a lot from you and your ideas and perspectives. I wish you all the best, and thanks again.
Thank you so much. It's been great to speak with you.
Thank you for all the audience who joined us today. I'm sure you find a lot of golden nuggets in today's episode. I look forward to seeing you again next week with another episode and another great guest, an aviapreneur from somewhere in this big aviation industry. Have a great day.